In the annals of royal history, few lives evoke as much empathy and heartbreak as that of Queen Soraya of Iran. Born into a world of privilege and luxury, her life took a series of unexpected and often tragic turns that ultimately defined her existence. Despite the opulence and power that came with being married to the Shah of Iran, Soraya's life was a testament to the profound loneliness and sorrow that can befall even those who seem to have everything. This video delves deeply into the poignant story of Soraya, exploring her early life, her fateful marriage to the Shah, and the tragic events that led to her loneliness and ultimate demise. If you enjoy this video, please don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more documentaries like this one. Thank you for watching. Soraya Esfandiari Bakhtiari was born on June 22, 1932, in the Isfahan English Mission Hospital in Persia, on her parents' 6th wedding anniversary. Her father, Khalil Esfandiari, was a prominent Bakhtiari chieftain, while her mother, Eva Karl, was German-born. Shortly after her birth, Soraya's mother took her to Berlin, where they were soon joined by her father. These early years in Berlin were marked by comfort and happiness. However, financial difficulties forced the family to return to Iran in 1937. In Isfahan, Soraya attended classes arranged for children of Germans living in the city, supplemented by a Persian tutor her father arranged. Soraya was a spirited child, often found climbing trees or hunting gazelles. By the age of 9, she could shoot down a bird in flight, displaying a blend of courage and adventure. In 1944, Soraya's parents sent her to an English mission school in Tehran. Her exceptional private education had put her years ahead of her peers, allowing her to take her final exams at the age of 14 instead of the usual 17. With the end of World War II, the family moved to Switzerland in early 1947, where they rented an apartment in Zurich. Soraya was enrolled in a finishing school in Montreux to learn French, later transferring to another in Lausanne. Despite her young age, Soraya received several marriage proposals from Persian noble families. Her parents, however, shielded her from these distractions, wanting her to focus on her studies. Fate, however, had other plans. In 1950, while studying in London, her cousin, Gudars Bakhtiari, took photos of her, ostensibly for his mother. In reality, these photos were to be shown to the Dowager Empress of Iran. Mohammed Reza Pahlavi, who descended the Peacock Throne in 1941, had been previously married to Princess Fawzia of Egypt. After a tumultuous marriage, they divorced, leaving the Shah lonely and eager to find a new queen. The Dowager Empress, seeking a suitable match, was captivated by Soraya's beauty and grace. 2 days later, an express letter from Soraya's father arrived in Zurich, requesting her immediate presentation at court. On October 7th, Soraya flew to Tehran. Their first meeting was enchanting. The Shah, breaking protocol, asked Soraya to sit beside him, and they discussed their shared experiences of studying in Switzerland. They bonded quickly, and Soraya agreed to marry him that very evening. 3 days later, the official celebrations to mark their engagement took place, and the wedding was announced for December 27th. However, Soraya learned early on that this would be no fairy tale. During a walk in the park, the Shah turned to her and said,
"Don't imagine that I am offering you an easy life, Soraya. The duties that you must accept will be hard and wearisome. I hope that you have no illusions on that score."
Soraya later wrote in her memoirs,
"Even then I realized that this man values his throne and his country more highly than all else, more than his private life."
Before Soraya could give much thought to what her future would be like, she fell seriously ill. Doctors diagnosed her with typhoid fever. Rumors circulated in the press that Soraya had been poisoned by the Shah's enemies. These turned out to be mere gossip, as there was a typhoid epidemic in Tehran. As was usual for typhoid cases, Soraya had to stay in bed for a month, delaying the wedding. The Shah was patient and concerned with Soraya, visiting her every afternoon and ensuring she had the best care. During this time, the affection that she felt for him began to blossom into love. They finally married on February 12, 1951. Soraya would later say of her wedding,
"When I said yes, I was still not fully aware of the burden that I had taken upon myself. This is probably the case with every young bride. Hardly a single one will maintain later that she had really had any idea at the time of how her entire future life would be affected by marriage. But I was marrying not only a man and his family, as the saying goes, for I was also linking my destiny with that of a nation of 20 million, for whose well-being I must henceforth also be in part responsible."
Very quickly after her marriage, things began to take a turn for the worse. The Shah forbade her from allowing her great aunt to visit her after the Shah's mother informed him that she might be a spy. This was distressing for Soraya, as her aunt was very close to her and always knew how to cheer her up. According to Soraya, the Shah was jealous of anyone who got close to her. She later wrote,
"I have a vivid memory of how frequently in those days I felt the lack of that human warmth to which I had been accustomed in my parents' home. What perhaps I missed most was the simple sincerity with which I was used to being treated, and with which I had always treated others."
Soon after her marriage, Soraya also came to realize that marriage to the Shah invariably meant marriage to his entire family. Every day she came into contact with members of the Pahlavi clan and learned much about them. The head of the dynasty was Taj Moluch, the Shah's mother. Taj Moluch's father had commanded the Cossack regiment in which Reza Khan had risen from the ranks. Reza, then a widower of 37, had married his commanding officer's daughter. In October 1916, she bore him a daughter, Princess Shams, and 3 years later twins, Mohammed Reza and Ashraf. This did not prevent Reza, once he had achieved power, from taking 2 other wives in rapid succession. Like all Persian women of her generation, Taj Moluch regarded this as quite normal. In any event, as mother of the firstborn son, she remained the senior wife. Soraya also became acquainted with the Shah's siblings. His sisters, Princesses Shams and Ashraf in particular, made lasting impressions on the Empress. Shams had inserted herself into Soraya's life before she had even married Mohammed Reza, hoping that her influence with Soraya would translate to influence in the royal court. She was very transparent with her aims, while the Shah's twin sister, Princess Ashraf, was more subtle and cunning. Soraya forged a much closer relationship with Ashraf than she did with Shams. There was also Mohammed Reza's daughter with Empress Fazia, Princess Shahnaz. When Soraya and the Shah were married, Shahnaz was 11 years old. She had been sent to boarding school in Switzerland, but was brought home for the summer. It was obvious to Soraya that Shahnaz had grown up without the love of her parents, and she showed sympathy to Shahnaz, and the two forged a close relationship. But all was not well in Iran. Due to an increasingly volatile political climate, the Shah sent Soraya on an extended visit to Europe in the spring of 1953, promising to send for her once the crisis was over, or that he would join her, and the two would start a new life together in Europe if the crisis could not be resolved. Weeks went by, and the Shah refused to give Soraya a definite answer. Finally, in June, the Shah agreed that Soraya should return, and she touched down in Tehran on June 15th. However, the political situation had hardly improved. The Prime Minister, Mossadegh, had entered into negotiations with leaders of the Soviet Union, and politicians in America became convinced that Iran's oil would fall into the hands of the Russians. After the President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower, announced on June 25th that until Iran had solved its oil dispute, the country could no longer rely on United States aid. Soraya convinced the Shah to oust Mossadegh in a coup d'etat. The Shah was at first resistant to such a plan, and was advised against taking any action against his prime minister. It was only after the Shah learned of Mossadegh's plans to use the Tujia communists to campaign against the royal family that he decided to act. However, they were betrayed by double agents working for Mossadegh, and on the night that Colonel Nasiri was going to arrest Mossadegh, he himself was detained by those loyal to the Prime Minister. The Shah and Soraya, alarmed by this unexpected turn of events, immediately escaped on their small plane, traveling to Ramsar before boarding their larger plane which would take them to Baghdad. On the flight, the men were deeply distressed, and according to Soraya, the Shah said,
"It's all over."
Soraya, however, was hopeful and replied,
"Don't worry, we'll be back in Tehran in a week."
Meanwhile, their flight from Iran had become a worldwide sensation. When they landed at Ciampino Airport, they found representatives of the Italian government waiting to meet them, as well as hundreds of press photographers. The foreign minister Fatemi had made a furious and impassioned speech against the imperial family to the Tehran mob. He proposed that all Pahlavis be hanged, a republic declared, and the communists invited to join the government. What followed this speech was absolute mob chaos. Tudeh adherents had looted hundreds of shops in the capital. They stormed schools, ministries, and had burned countless pictures of the Shah and bonfires. They had even toppled statues of the old Shah Reza from their pedestals and had desecrated his tomb, which was on consecrated ground. After these developments, Soraya too lost hope. The Shah informed Soraya that they would have to economize and perhaps could buy a farm together and retire somewhere, preferably in America, so the Shah could be close to his family. This was not to be. The very next day, they received news that Mossadegh had been overthrown, and on August 23rd, just 1 week after they had fled to Rome, the Shah returned to Iran. Soraya was ordered to stay in Rome until it was safe for her back home, and she returned to Iran on September 7th. Mossadegh was put on trial on November 18th, and on December 21st he was sentenced to death. The Shah, however, had no desire to turn Mossadegh into a martyr, so he had his sentence reduced to 3 years in prison. Soraya would later describe the year following the fall of Mossadegh as the happiest of her life. Following their return to Iran, Soraya noticed that certain ladies who used to intrigue behind her back now excelled in complimenting and flattering her. The Shah, having appreciated Soraya's prodding to act against Mossadegh, refused her nothing. She began to truly feel like the Empress and became more confident in her role. She was even allowed to bring back her aunt that the Shah had ordered away at the beginning of their marriage. To increase the Empress's prestige even more, the Shah created an order of chivalry in her name. There was a first, second, and third class, and Soraya later bestowed this order upon many women in both Persia and abroad. At one time, Mohammed Reza was also planning an official coronation for himself and Soraya to be crowned. But this eventually came to nothing, as the Shah wanted it to be celebrated with real Oriental pomp and ceremony, and the great expense that the occasion would have entailed seemed premature to his advisors. Soraya took her duties as Empress seriously, and was a proactive imperial consort. She founded the Soraya Foundation to help alleviate the suffering of the masses. Throughout the next years, they went on at least 2 tours around the world, visiting America and Europe. Soraya had settled into her role as Empress. However, her peace was about to be irretrievably shattered. During their tour in America in 1954, the Shah first expressed concern over the succession to the throne, and at his behest, he and Soraya were both examined by specialists to see if there were any problems with their fertility. The Shah only had 1 child from his first marriage, a daughter, Princess Shahnaz, and it was important that he have a male heir. He also had 1 full brother, Prince Ali, but the Shah did not consider him a suitable successor, and Soraya could see that the Shah's longing for his son was only growing. The dynastic concerns grew when Ali Reza tragically died in an airplane accident in October 1954, shortly before Soraya and the Shah departed on their American and European goodwill tour. The Shah had also survived an assassination attempt in 1949, and if another attempt was made and was successful, there would be no direct Pahlavi successor to the peacock throne. The doctors who examined Soraya in New York found no fertility problems and told her to be patient, as there was no reason why she should not have children. But not everyone was content to wait. On April 3, 1957, the Shah appointed Manisher Iqbal as Prime Minister. the first time that the position was filled by a man who was not a member of one of Iran's 200 leading families. Eqbal was a doctor by profession and held a professorship at the University of Tehran. A few days after his appointment as Prime Minister, Dr. Eqbal had an audience with the Shah. Eqbal informed the Shah that if he was to undertake reform in the Shah's name, then the Shah's authority must be unassailable.
Either the Empress must present your heir in the near future, or the dynasty's future must be assured in some other way.
Soraya would later write,
If we too had been alone in the world, there would probably have been no limits to our patience. Although our marriage had not been expressly a love match to begin with, we had learned to understand one another better with each passing year. Our characters were well matched. We had the same views on many subjects, and we had been working ever more closely together.
But the patience of the government ministers and nobility of Iran was wearing thin. Soraya's marriage had been a happy one, and it was precisely because of this happiness that Soraya refused to go on any longer walking on eggshells. The sequence of events of the following months was initiated by Soraya herself. One day, in July 1957, when Soraya was walking with the Shah, she told him,
We can't go on like this, Mohammed. The people are becoming impatient. If anything were to happen to you and there were no heir to the throne, I should be held responsible for the state of chaos into which the country would slide.
She told the Shah that she couldn't continue with her work under the pressure. The Shah asked her what she proposed. Soraya first proposed that the Shah lift the ban on the Qajars, one of Mohammed Reza's half-brothers, to inherit the throne. The Shah refused to this, telling Soraya that it would require an alteration to the constitution, and that would, in turn, require the approval of the Council of Wise Men. Soraya told him to call the council, and when the Shah asked her what would happen if the council should turn down her proposal, she spoke the words that would alter the course of her life forever.
In that case, there will be no alternative left to us but to part.
At first, the Shah refused to listen to such a suggestion, but as the weeks went by, he slowly grew used to this alternative. Soraya eventually left Iran, traveling to Saint Moritz for a skiing holiday, as if everything was fine. The Shah told her that he would keep her informed on the latest updates by telephone. Soraya would write of the situation.
Romantic persons have maintained that the Shah should have modeled his conduct on that of the Duke of Windsor, who sacrificed his throne for the sake of the woman he loves. Such a step was never discussed between us, and would certainly never have crossed his mind.
Ancient Persian tradition was too deeply ingrained in his blood. No woman, no matter how much he might love her, could count for more than his country, his throne, and his desire for an heir. On February 13, 1958, almost 7 years to the day since she had married Mohammed Reza, Soraya left Tehran. The Shah and his ministers went to the airport to see her off and pay her the customary honors. A few days after she arrived in Saint Moritz, she received a call from her father in Köln, informing her that he had broken his ankle. Soraya flew to Köln to be with her father, and it was there that the Shah sent 3 emissaries to inform Soraya of the decision. They informed her that the council had rejected her proposals. And so Soraya questioned why the Shah had sent them if the proposals had been rejected. Back in Iran, Senator Abdul Adha had made the following proposal.
According to Mohammedan law, the monarch has the right to take a second wife in order that she may provide him with that heir to the throne, for whom we are all so eager. In the event that Empress Soraya announces her agreement that the Shah should make a second marriage, there is no reason why she should not return to Tehran and continue to live at the monarch's side.
The emissaries had been given the task of winning Soraya's approval to this proposal. Soraya immediately refused. The Shah telephoned her once again, with Soraya telling the Shah what she thought of his proposals, and he asked her to think it over again. But it was clear to both of them that the end had come. On March 14th, he announced their divorce to the public without having spoken to Soraya again. A few days later, he wrote her a letter about how much she regretted it all. But Soraya did not reply. The Shah settled a sum of money on Soraya and made her an imperial princess of Iran in her own right. According to Soraya, after their divorce, the Shah never attempted to exert any control over her private life and never took any steps towards reconciliation, despite rumors to the contrary. Soraya later heard that the most the Shah would say about her was that he wished she would find a good man who loved her and would settle down with her so that she could finally be happy. In the autumn of 1959, the Shah married for a third time to Farah Diba, and the next year she presented him with the longed-for heir. Soraya wrote,
"My sacrifice was not in vain. Looking back on it all, I feel I made the only possible right decision."
A decision that opened new horizons for Soraya as well. In the years following Soraya's divorce from the Shah of Iran, she had a few brief flings, including one with Franco Indovina, which ended tragically when Indovina died in a plane crash in 1972. The press was fascinated with Soraya, and this fascination extended to her private life. Every time Soraya was seen with a man, the press speculated on whether or not they were lovers, but almost always assumed they were. Soraya would write of this time,
Apart from Brigitte Bardot and Elizabeth Taylor, there is, I think, no woman alive who had been credited with more affairs of the heart than I.
Soraya also had a brief acting career, appearing in 2 films in 1965, I Tre Volti and She. After Indovina's death, Soraya suffered deeply from depression. She moved to Paris, and in her later years, she lived on 46 Avenue Montaigne. In 1979, Soraya wrote to Mohammed Reza, who had been deposed and was now living in Panama. He was suffering from cancer, and Soraya wrote to tell him that she still loved him and wanted to see him one last time. In 1980, it was decided that Soraya would visit Mohammed Reza in Cairo, but he died before she could make the trip. Soraya later expressed feeling lonely in her 1991 memoir, Palace of Solitude. She never remarried or had children. She died on October 25, 2001, of undisclosed causes in her apartment in Paris, France, at the age of 69. Her life, marked by profound love and loss, remains a poignant reminder of the complexities of human emotions and the relentless pursuit of duty over personal happiness.